Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world, because I guarantee you'll want to compare your quiet street with what happened on ours. Michael and Melanie had just hauled the last moving box into their new house when the first strange knock echoed through the summer heat. It wasn't a polite rap, more like a summons, sharp and impatient. On the porch stood Tina Foster, Greenfield's HOA president, wearing a full suit in 95 degrees like she'd walked straight out of a corporate courtroom and into suburbia. She carried a binder that looked heavy enough to double as medieval armor, and hanging from her belt was a measuring tape, because apparently she inspected new neighbors like the Romans once measured conquered land. Historians still argue whether power attracts eccentric personalities, but standing there in sweat-dampened polyester, Tina seemed to prove the point. Melanie, calm as ever, just smiled. "We'll schedule something once we're settled," she said, and with one steady hand, closed the door as gently as if she were shooing away a door-to-door vacuum salesman. Michael expected that to be the end, but Tina's pride couldn't survive that tiny act of resistance. For 10 solid minutes, she hammered the bell like a malfunctioning cuckoo clock, her face tightening with each unanswered ding. Melanie ignored her completely, and Michael, half worried, half entertained, noticed something odd. His wife wasn't just calm. She was practiced, like she'd handled people far scarier than a suburban Karen with a clipboard. The next morning a note appeared, handwritten in furious block letters. Final notice. Inspection required in 24 hours. Melanie read it over coffee, shrugged, crumpled it, and dropped it in the trash. Michael asked if they should be worried. She sipped, eyes steady. "She can't force entry," she said, and there was steel in her tone that made him wonder how she knew that so absolutely. But Tina wasn't retreating. She was escalating. At 8 a.m. sharp, the pounding began again, so loud it rattled Michael's editing equipment upstairs. When that failed, she came back with a bullhorn, declaring emergency inspection required like she was directing traffic at a construction site. Neighbors peeked from curtains, kids filmed on phones, while Melanie continued a business call about clearing backlog from a previous administration, as if jackhammers weren't shaking the walls. Even the neighborhood teenager Lucas began narrating the chaos into his camera, calling it day 3 of door-pounding lady, like some suburban wildlife documentary. By the 4th day, flyers plastered every mailbox. Refusal to comply, safety risk, possible illegal activity. Michael's phone rang with concerned neighbors asking if he was running a meth lab in his basement. That night over dinner, Melanie calmly dialed someone and introduced herself not as Johnson, but as Hayes. "We might need intervention," she said, then hung up without another word. Michael stared, his fork halfway to his mouth. Intervention? Hayes. His wife was hiding something, and Tina had no clue the storm she was about to summon. The 5th morning brought sirens, a sound that usually meant a medical scare or maybe a fender bender, but this time the cruiser slowed right in front of Michael's house. His stomach dropped. Could Tina really have turned ignoring a door into a police matter? Out waddled Tina in her finest courtroom chic, clutching a folder labeled evidence like she was about to prosecute Al Capone. She waved wildly at the officer, trembling voice spinning tales of illegal substances and suspicious resistance. Historians still argue whether bureaucracy breeds imagination, but Tina's dramatics could have earned her a place on Broadway. Michael was about to rush out and explain when Melanie stepped through the door, calm as if she'd rehearsed it all. She pulled an ID from her wallet. The officer froze, eyes widening, posture snapping upright. "Chief Hayes," he stammered. "Ma'am, I didn't realize you lived here." Michael nearly fainted. Chief? 8 years of marriage, and she'd told him she was in consulting. Now his wife was the new chief of police. Tina's jaw practically unhinged. She sputtered, tried to shout about authority, but the officer cut her off gently. "Ma'am, refusing an HOA inspection isn't a crime. The Constitution protects against forced entry." It was like watching someone show up to a sword fight armed with a pool noodle. Neighbors crept out, whispering, pointing. Lucas filmed from his window, narrating like David Attenborough. Observe the HOA Karen realizing her prey is actually an apex predator. Even Michael had to laugh. That night, Tina ranted online in all caps, claiming corruption, warning of hidden violence. One chilling comment stood out. "Research Johnson case, foster family involved." Melanie closed the laptop fast, her voice edged with something new. fear. Over coffee the next morning, Michael finally learned the truth. She wasn't just a chief. She'd been building cases against corrupt HOAs across the county. The old leadership buried complaints. Kickbacks, fake fines, fabricated violations, she explained. I'm cleaning house. Meanwhile, Tina spiraled deeper, crafting conspiracy boards and fake expert analyses, red arrows scribbled in Microsoft Paint, the kind of thing you'd expect on a fringe forum. Lucas even caught her muttering rehearsals in her yard, laser pointers slicing the air like she was auditioning for CSI, Suburbia. And yet, Michael realized, she wasn't just eccentric, she was obsessed. Every highlight, every headline, twisted to prove Melanie was a violent fraud. Then the phone rang. Melanie stared at the unknown number, face drained of color. That's impossible, she whispered. He shouldn't have this number. She let it ring to voicemail, eyes hard. For the first time, Michael saw real fear on his wife's face, not from Tina, but from something or someone buried in her past. Outside, Tina taped invitations for an emergency HOA meeting, complete with catered snacks and bold promises of irrefutable evidence. Two women on a collision course, one armed with conspiracies, the other with the law. The night of the emergency meeting, the community center was jammed like a high school gym before a championship game. Tina had turned the place into her personal courtroom, poster boards lined like soldiers, a borrowed projector humming, binders stacked on each seat. She strutted up front in shoulder-padded armor from the 90s, eyes blazing with the manic conviction of someone convinced history would vindicate her. Ladies and gentlemen, she boomed, laser pointer trembling in her hand. I present evidence of police corruption in your very own neighborhood. Slide 1. A photo of Michael and Melanie's house, arrows pointing at their door like it hid the Ark of the Covenant. The room buzzed, some nodded nervously, others rolled eyes, but Tina pressed on, flipping slides faster than a bad TED Talk. Her voice rose. The pattern of violence is clear. She hides behind a badge to avoid accountability. And that's when Lucas stood up from the back, phone in hand. That's not true, he said, loud enough to silence the room. I have real footage. Every head swiveled toward the teenager who'd just flipped the script. Tina's pointer clattered to the floor, her certainty wobbling. Michael seized the moment. He lugged his box of evidence forward, his voice steadier than he expected. My wife didn't want this circus, but enough is enough. These, he spread papers on the projector, are Tina's fake fines, forged signatures, regulations she invented. Federal mail fraud, not community management. Gasps rippled as Melanie stepped beside him, calm as if briefing fellow officers. The Johnson case, she's weaponized? That was a meth lab explosion. I carried 3 teenagers out before it blew. The injuries she cites as brutality were chemical burns from the blast. Those kids are alive because of my team. Tina shrieked, lies. My son never said. But Melanie, unshaken, pulled out her phone. Would you like me to call Danny Harris right now? The name landed like a grenade. Tina froze. Harris? He changed his name. Her voice cracked. The board president, pale with disbelief, finally intervened. These documents prove systematic fraud. You're removed, effective immediately. The vote was unanimous. Not a single hand rose for Tina. She collapsed into chaos, clawing at her poster boards, knocking chairs, ranting about cover-ups as neighbors filmed. Lucas captured her stumbling exit, red-faced, muttering threats while her shopping cart of conspiracy props rattled toward the door. By dawn, his upload, HOA Karen vs. Police Chief Epic Fail, had 100,000 views, climbing fast. Local news picked it up, hashtags trended worldwide. Tina, once feared, was now mocked, reduced to a meme in oversized shoulder pads. But the real reckoning came when Melanie finally answered that unknown number. Danny Harris's voice filled the kitchen, steady, grateful. Chief Hayes, I've been clean 5 years. A family, a job, all because you dragged me out of that building. I wanted to thank you. Then a softer voice broke in, Tina, overhearing. Danny? You never told me. You changed your name. He sighed. I tried, Mom. You never listened. You thought they hurt me, but she saved me. The silence that followed was heavier than any gavel. A week later, Tina's house was up for sale, legal bills draining her dry. She slunk to Florida, where rumor has it she got tossed from her new HOA for arguing about plant heights. Meanwhile, Melanie and Michael renewed their vows in the park, surrounded by neighbors wearing Team Chief shirts Lucas designed. Danny came, wife and daughter at his side, hugging the woman who'd saved his life twice, once from an explosion and once from his mother's obsession. Lucas's film, Measuring Madness, racked up 15 million views, earning him a scholarship. The top comment still makes Michael laugh. She measured everything except her own behavior. And so the storm passed, the street quiet again, porch lights glowing softly. Justice had come not with fury, but with truth. Sometimes karma wears a badge, sometimes a lens, sometimes just the patience to wait while arrogance topples itself. The lesson lingers. Never assume you know who your neighbor is. That quiet woman folding laundry may command more authority than the loudest bully on the block. Now, let the pace slow, let the noise fade. Imagine the laughter of children echoing under the park's old oak. Imagine porch swings creaking gently in the dusk breeze. Imagine a neighborhood finally free of fear, where lights inside houses mean safety, not siege. Melanie sets her badge down for the night, the metal cool against the table, while Michael edits another video, the mundane restored, peace stitched back into ordinary hours. And as you drift from this story, carry with you that steady truth, that arrogance collapses, that patience prevails, that justice, however delayed, always finds its mark.